Look, I raised last night this question that everybody's asking about Victoria and the quarantine inquiry, where every witness could not recall or didn't know. That is, the police commissioner, the former police commissioner, the emergency management commissioner, the chief health officer, the head of the Premier's department, the head of the Department of the Jobs Minister, the head of the Department of the Health Minister, every minister, including the Premier. They couldn't recall who put the security of the hotels in the hands of untrained private security guards. It is fanciful to imagine that one minister or public servant could recall. Though, during cross-examination on Friday, September 4, over a month ago, it was established that the then Police Commissioner, Graham Ashton, recommended, quote, that private security is to be the first line of security, unquote. Now, as well as all government ministers, including Andrews, and all public servants saying they didn't know, why would none have alluded to the evidence of Friday, September 4 by Commander Tully, who was in charge of security? But the don't know answers by government ministers and officials seem to have an explanation. I made this point some months ago. The Premier of Victoria, Andrews, introduced frighteningly tough industrial manslaughter legislation earlier this year. The aim was to jail the boards of top corporations should they be linked to deaths in the workplace. So here, someone's been responsible for unsafe work practices. Under the legislation, anyone responsible for unsafe work practices can be prosecuted. There was no proper training of the security guards, which led to the spread of infection and the deaths of over 700 people. The legislation that Andrews introduced earlier this year was at the behest of his union mates, designed to grab the corporate tall poppies. But the new industrial manslaughter clauses do not exempt public servants or ministers. So, no one will admit to knowing anything about the employment of untrained police security guards, but surely if Daniel Andrews and his government had been responsible for a failure of quarantining and a failure in aged care, has the Andrews government been responsible for unsafe work practices that have contributed to death? Therefore, are they liable for prosecution? If not, why not? If the act was designed to attack large enterprises linked to workplace deaths, how else do you describe the failure of the Andrews government leading to deaths in the workplace? Ken Phillips is the Executive Director of Self-Employed Australia. I spoke to him earlier this year. In fact, it was in August he had written a letter to the Victorian Work Cover Authority containing the following sentence, and I quote, I consider that the development, planning, management and implementation of the Victorian Government COVID-19 Hotel Quarantine Containment Program, the planning phase of which commenced in late January or early February 2020, such time only specifically ascertainable by investigation, instigated, managed or controlled by the Victorian Government, various Victorian Government organisations and agencies, including their contractors and staff, constitutes several offences contrary to the Occupational Health and Safety Act, in that the health, safety and welfare of employees and other persons were put at risk, contrary to, but not limited to, sections 21, 23, 26 and 32 of the OHS Act. I thought I'd come back to Ken Phillips and see where things are. Ken, on the evidence we have, there was no proper training of these security guards. There were other events that led to deaths of many people because of the spread of the infection. None of these people could remember anything. Should there be prosecutions?
Alan, we have written today to the prosecuting authority, the WorkSafe Victoria, again asking them to undertake prosecutions. This time we have been able to name the persons and the organisations that need to be prosecuted, and we have been able to identify the specific provisions in the Act that need to be enforced. The WorkSafe Authority, in receiving this letter from us now, have 3 months in which to either undertake the prosecutions or send us a reply saying why they are not undertaking the prosecutions.
So basically, just to interrupt you, any individual can make a complaint to Work Cover. They must investigate. If they decide not to prosecute Andrews and ministers and public servants, then they must give a reason. And if then they don't continue, the individual, as I understand, can go to the DPP. And if they decide not to prosecute, then they must also give a reason in writing. So where do you think this is likely to end up?
Well, it's certainly going to drag out through into next year and beyond. The range of offences here is so wide and the numbers of people are so enormous that it's inconceivable that the prosecutions don't occur. Now, remember, if prosecutions don't happen, it sets a precedent in which essentially is the collapse of the entire work safety system in Victoria, because everyone into the future who has a work safe incident would be able to turn around and say, well, look, I didn't know. It would become a precedent for defence. Now, that would simply cause the collapse of the work safety system in Victoria. So it is just unimaginable that the WorkSafe Authority do nothing.
Absolutely. I mean, my question is simple. If the government's responsible overall, and a raft of ministers and the police commissioner or the former police commissioner, and if a hotel worker and more than 20 security guards at more than 2 hotels caught coronavirus and inadvertently spread it to the community, then why wouldn't prosecutions follow? Do you think the realisation of all this has led to these people having a severe case of amnesia?
Well, I could only speculate on that, Alan, but the point that really has to be made is that these laws for work safety are applied across the entire community. If any one of us or a firm were to do something that caused a death or injury of someone, we would be immediately prosecuted, and we should be. We cannot have a society in which there is one rule for the people who rule over us and another rule for us.
Correct.
There has to be consistency. We do live in a society in which there is the rule of law, and failure to prosecute really indicates a collapse of the rule of law in Victoria, in our view.
Good on you. Good to talk to you. You keep at it. You're on the right tram. We will as well. Thank you for your time. Ken Phillips,
Thanks, Alan.
the Executive Director of Self-Employed Australia. We'll keep in touch with him.